This is the moment Keisha Williams's professional life ended. Not because she broke the law, not because she lost her temper, but because she asked too many questions in the wrong zip code while being the wrong shade of concerned. Within 8 weeks, Officer Trent Barclay would be terminated without pension. The Riverside County Sheriff's Department would issue a formal apology, and the city would quietly settle with Williams for $875,000. Money that represents not just damages, but acknowledgement of a catastrophic failure at every institutional level. But here, in this moment, as metal clicks against Keisha Williams' wrists in front of 17 horrified parents, none of that has happened yet. Here, she's just a black woman being arrested for the crime of maternal persistence. A licensed social worker being hauled out of a daycare in handcuffs because she had the audacity to document what she saw and demand accountability for what she found. This isn't a story about one bad day. This is a story about what happens when institutional arrogance collides with parental instinct, when badge authority overrides professional credentials, and when the machinery of consequence finally, brutally, catches up. Keisha Williams, 38, master's degree in social work from UC Berkeley, 12 years with Riverside County Child Protective Services, mother of 2, mandated reporter, licensed professional, standing in a daycare parking lot in handcuffs, her daughter still inside with unexplained injuries, her questions unanswered, her career about to detonate. Before we continue, where are you watching from? This story went viral in California, but the pattern it exposed exists everywhere. If you're new here, hit subscribe. We cover justice stories the algorithm doesn't want trending. 1.3 million people don't agree with silence. Join them. Now back to what happened. Sunshine Academy Child Care Center, 4247 Magnolia Avenue, Riverside, California. Tuesday morning, September 12, 2023. Temperature already pushing 87 degrees by 8:15 a.m., the kind of inland heat that makes asphalt shimmer and patients evaporate. The facility sits in a neighborhood that real estate agents call transitional, a polite euphemism meaning the old wealth moved east, the new families moved in, and the infrastructure hasn't caught up. The building itself is a converted medical office, all beige stucco and tinted windows, surrounded by a chain-link fence decorated with sun-faded alphabet murals. There's a playground with rubberized ground cover, a shade structure that only works for 2 hours a day, and a parking lot with exactly 19 spaces for a facility licensed for 62 children. It's the kind of place that markets itself as affordable quality care. Monthly tuition runs $1,100 per child. Not cheap, but not prohibitive for dual-income families navigating California's cost-of-living tightrope. The website features stock photos of diverse children playing together, bullet points about nurturing environments and qualified staff, and a testimonial page that hasn't been updated since 2019. Inside, the air conditioning struggles. There's that particular institutional smell, industrial cleaner trying to mask the layered odors of graham crackers, apple juice, and 23 toddlers in various states of potty training. Laminated behavior charts line the hallways. Hand-drawn turkeys from last November still decorate one bulletin board. A television in the reception area plays local news on mute. This is where working parents bring their children because the alternatives are worse or non-existent. This is where Keisha Williams brought her daughter Amara every weekday for 7 months, trusting that the professional credentials listed on the website translated to actual care. This is where that trust shattered. And this is where Officer Trent Barclay arrived, 11 minutes after being dispatched, with absolutely no interest in understanding what he was walking into. Keisha Williams didn't stumble into social work, she ran toward it. Bachelor's degree in psychology from UCLA, 2007. Master's in social work from UC Berkeley, 2010. Licensed clinical social worker, State of California, 2011. 12 years with Riverside County Department of Children's Services, specializing in abuse investigation and family preservation. 47 children placed in protective custody during her tenure. 31 successfully reunified with families after intervention. 16 cases resulting in permanent removals and prosecutions. She knows what abuse looks like. She knows the difference between a playground scrape and a grip mark. She knows the bureaucratic language of incident reports, the legal threshold for mandated reporting, and the exact phrasing required to trigger an investigation without exposing herself to liability. She also knows something else. The system doesn't work faster just because you work for the system. Her daughter Amara, 3 years old, verbal, social, no behavioral red flags, had been enrolled at Sunshine Academy since February 2023. The choice was pragmatic. The facility was 12 minutes from Keisha's office, accepted her county employee benefits, and had immediate openings when her previous childcare arrangement collapsed. The reviews were mixed, but not alarming. 2 stars complaining about communication issues, 4 stars praising caring teachers. Nothing that screamed danger. For 7 months the arrangement worked. Morning drop-off at 7:45, evening pickup at 5:30. Amara came home happy most days, tired some days, occasionally reporting that she didn't like the loud room or that another child had taken her toy. Normal toddler grievances. Nothing that activated Keisha's professional alarm system. Until September 11th. Pickup that Monday evening had been rushed. Keisha was running late from a court appearance, traffic was hellish, and she'd arrived at 6:18 p.m., 48 minutes past closing. The staff member at the desk, a young woman named Brittany, maybe 23, perpetually exhausted, had been visibly annoyed, but said nothing. Amara had been sitting alone in the reading corner, still wearing her outdoor shoes, clutching her backpack. When Keisha knelt to hug her daughter, Amara flinched. Not a startle. A flinch. The kind Keisha had documented in case files hundreds of times. The kind that meant pain, not surprise. That evening at home, during bath time, Keisha noticed them. 4 oval bruises on Amara's upper left arm, evenly spaced. Adult finger width apart. Fresh, purple at the centers, red at the edges. Consistent with a grab, a hard grab. An adult hand on a 3-year-old's arm with enough force to leave marks that would photograph well. Keisha took photos. 6 images from different angles, a ruler for scale, a timestamp visible. She documented Amara's verbal account. Miss Jessica was mad. She squeezed my arm. It hurt. She reviewed the enrollment packet she'd signed 7 months earlier, confirming the language about incident reports and mandatory notification of any physical injury. She didn't sleep that night. Instead, she cross-referenced the facility's licensing information with the California Department of Social Services database. Sunshine Academy had been cited twice in the past 18 months, once for inadequate staff-to-child ratios, once for incomplete background checks, both violations corrected on paper, both concerning enough that Keisha knew this wasn't going to be a simple conversation. September 12th. Keisha called in late to work, the first time in 2 years. She arrived at Sunshine Academy at 8:15 a.m. Carrying a folder with the photos, her licensing credentials, and a printed copy of California Penal Code Section 166, which obligates her, as a mandated reporter, to immediately report suspected abuse to law enforcement or Child Protective Services. She'd already called the abuse hotline at 7:30 a.m. Report filed, case number assigned. Now she needed the facility's records. Amara's sign-in and sign-out logs. The staff roster showing who was supervising the 3-year-old room yesterday evening. Any incident reports filed. Any witness statements. The director's response? Call the police. Not to investigate the bruises. To remove Keisha from the building. Officer Trent Barclay, Riverside County Sheriff's Department. Badge number 2847. 16 years on patrol. Age 41. High school graduate. Some community college. Never completed a degree. Hired in 2007 during an aggressive recruitment push when the department was understaffed and standards were flexible. His personnel file tells a story that should have ended his career years earlier. 2011. Written reprimand for inappropriate use of force during a traffic stop. Suspect, a 19-year-old black male, required 6 stitches after being forced to the pavement. Barclay's report stated the suspect resisted. Dashcam footage showed 8 seconds between verbal command and takedown. Internal Affairs determined policy was followed. Translation, no punishment. 2014. Formal complaint from a Latina woman who claimed Barclay refused to take her domestic violence reports seriously, suggesting she stop being dramatic and work it out at home. Case investigated. Barclay received additional training. The woman's ex-boyfriend hospitalized her 4 months later. 2016. Written complaint from a black business owner who alleged Barclay demanded proof of ownership when he arrived at his own store after an alarm malfunction. Barclay's report stated he was ensuring property security. The business owner's attorney threatened a lawsuit. The department offered a settlement. Barclay received a 3-day suspension without pay. 2018. Complaint from a school administrator who claimed Barclay was unnecessarily aggressive when responding to a call about a fight between middle schoolers. Video showed Barclay restraining a 13-year-old black girl in a chokehold-adjacent position while shouting threats. The department determined his actions were within acceptable parameters. The administrator resigned and publicly criticized the department on the way out. 2021. Formal grievance from a fellow officer, a black woman, who reported that Barclay made racially insensitive comments during a briefing. Internal investigation concluded there was insufficient evidence despite 2 corroborating witnesses. The officer who filed the complaint transferred to another jurisdiction 6 months later. 5 complaints in 10 years. That's not bad luck. That's not coincidence. That's not a few tough days and a hard job. That's a pattern. A documented institutional failure to address, liability waiting to detonate pattern. And on September 12, 2023, when dispatch sent Barclay to Sunshine Academy for a disturbance, no additional details, no context, just a woman refusing to leave a childcare facility. He arrived with exactly the assumptions you'd expect from someone with his track record. Authority challenged, civilian non-compliant, badge disrespected. He didn't ask what the disturbance was about. He didn't request context. He didn't ask to see credentials. He walked in, saw a black woman raising her voice at a white facility director, and made a decision in under 30 seconds. Keisha Williams was standing in the reception area when Officer Barclay entered at 8:26 a.m. She wasn't yelling, she wasn't threatening, she was firm, professional, the tone she used in court when a defense attorney tried to discredit her testimony, controlled but unyielding. The facility director, Sharon Kellerman, 54, 22 years running the center, was behind the front desk, arms crossed, face set in the expression of someone who's decided the conversation is over. Keisha had already explained 3 times. She had photographic evidence of bruising on her daughter. She was a licensed social worker and a mandated reporter. She had filed a report with Child Protective Services. She was requesting access to her daughter's daily logs and any incident reports from the previous day. She wasn't leaving until she had documentation. Sharon Kellerman's response had been consistent. Leave now, or I'm calling the police. Keisha's response, go ahead. This is where professionalism and parental rage become indistinguishable. Keisha Williams wasn't losing control. She was in complete control. She knew her rights. She knew the law. She knew exactly what language to use. But her daughter, her 3-year-old daughter, had been hurt in this building, and the person responsible for that building was refusing to provide basic accountability. When Barclay walked in, Kellerman immediately shifted gears. Relief washed over her face. Reinforcement had arrived. Officer, thank God. This woman is refusing to leave. I've asked her multiple times. She's being belligerent and disruptive. Other parents are concerned. I need her removed from the property. Barclay looked at Keisha, looked at the folder in her hands, looked at her posture, shoulders back, chin up, meeting his eyes directly. Then he looked back at Kellerman and made his assessment. Ma'am, I need you to step outside right now. Keisha didn't move. Her voice stayed level. Officer, my name is Keisha Williams. I'm a licensed social worker with Riverside County Child Services. My daughter attends this facility. Yesterday evening, she came home with bruises consistent with an adult grip mark. I filed a mandated abuse report this morning. I'm requesting documentation from the facility regarding who was supervising her at the time of the injury. I have a legal right to access my child's records. Barclay's expression didn't change. I don't care what you think you are. You're trespassing. You need to leave the premises immediately. This is where credentials become irrelevant. Keisha Williams had spent 12 years navigating hostile environments, angry parents, defensive caseworkers, overworked judges, traumatized children. She knew how to de-escalate. She knew how to assert authority without escalating. But in this moment, she was facing something different. She was facing a man who had already decided who she was. I am not trespassing. My daughter is enrolled here. I am requesting records that I am legally entitled to. If you'd like to see my identification and my licensing credentials, I have them right here. You're being aggressive and disruptive. I'm going to have to place you under arrest. Aggressive. The word hung in the air like a verdict. For what? For asking about bruises on my 3-year-old? Barclay moved forward, hand already reaching for his cuffs. Turn around. Hands behind your back. Keisha's voice finally cracked. Not with fear. With disbelief. This is insane. Someone call. You have the right to remain silent. The click of handcuffs echoed through the reception area. 17 parents in the waiting area froze. 2 pulled out phones. 1 started recording. Several moved instinctively toward their own children, as if proximity could protect them from whatever was happening. Barclay marched Keisha toward the door. She didn't resist. She didn't pull away. She knew the script. Any movement could be interpreted as resistance. Any verbalization could become threatening an officer. She'd seen it in case files. She'd testified about it in depositions. Now she was living it. This is where the system's mask slips. Because as Barclay walked Keisha Williams out of that building, past shocked parents, past confused toddlers, past her own daughter's classroom door, no one inside Sunshine Academy asked the question that mattered. What about the bruises? Do you think childcare directors should be legally required to provide documentation when a parent reports suspected abuse? Drop your answer below. Sergeant Rita Alvarado arrived at Sunshine Academy at 8:47 a.m. She hadn't been dispatched. She'd been in the area, heard the call on the radio, and something about the wording, non-compliant female refusing to leave childcare facility, pinged her radar. 23 years on the force, 13 years as a supervisor. She'd learned to recognize the gaps in what wasn't said. She pulled into the parking lot just as Barclay was putting Keisha into the back of his patrol car. Alvarado parked, got out, walked directly to Barclay. What do we have? Barclay straightened, shifted into report mode. Trespassing. Female refused multiple requests to leave the facility. Director called it in. Arrested for failure to comply and disturbing the peace. Alvarado looked at Keisha through the window, then looked at Barclay. Did you ask why she was refusing to leave? She was being aggressive, making accusations. What kind of accusations? Barclay hesitated. It was a micro pause, barely a second, but Alvarado caught it. Against the facility, the director said she was causing a scene. Alvarado walked to the patrol car, opened the door, looked at Keisha. Ma'am, can you tell me what happened here this morning? Keisha's voice was hoarse. She'd been crying, not from fear, from rage. My daughter has bruises on her arm from someone at this daycare. I filed a mandated report. I came here to get documentation. They called you instead of providing records. I'm a social worker. I know the law. I didn't break it. Alvarado's expression didn't change, but something shifted in her posture. You're a social worker? Licensed. Riverside County Child Services. 12 years. My credentials are in my purse. They took it. Alvarado looked at Barclay. Did you see her identification? She was being non-compliant. Did you ask to see identification? Silence. Alvarado walked back into the facility. 2 minutes later, she emerged with Keisha's purse. She pulled out the wallet, examined the ID, examined the licensing card, pulled out her phone, made a call, spoke for 90 seconds, hung up. Then she walked back to Barclay and said 3 words that ended his career. Uncuff her now. Barclay started to argue. Sergeant, she was, uncuff her now, or I'm writing you up for wrongful arrest and filing an official complaint with your union rep present. Uncuff her, give her belongings back, and get in your vehicle. Barclay's face went through several colors. He uncuffed Keisha, handed her the purse, walked to his patrol car without another word. Alvarado turned to Keisha. Ms. Williams, I apologize on behalf of this department. I've confirmed your credentials with your supervisor. I'm going to personally ensure that the facility provides you with all requested documentation. I'm also going to file a formal incident report about this arrest. You'll receive a copy. I recommend you contact an attorney. Keisha rubbed her wrists, looked at Alvarado, looked at Barclay sitting in his car, looked at the facility entrance where Sharon Kellerman was watching through the glass door. Then she said the only thing that mattered. Where's my daughter? The video went viral within 6 hours. Parent at the facility, iPhone footage, 38 seconds. Officer Barclay handcuffing Keisha Williams while she repeats, I'm a mandated reporter, and she has bruises. 17 million views in 72 hours. Shared by criminal justice reform accounts, parenting groups, social workers unions, and 3 California state legislators. The headlines wrote themselves. Black social worker arrested for reporting child abuse at daughter's daycare. Riverside County officer arrests mom, seeking answers about toddler's injuries. Mandated reporter handcuffed while requesting documentation of suspected abuse. Local news picked it up first, then state media, then national. By day 4, CNN had aired a segment. By day 6, the ACLU had issued a statement. By day 8, the Riverside County Board of Supervisors had called an emergency meeting. The Sheriff's Department issued its first statement on day 3. Boilerplate language. The incident is under internal review. We take all complaints seriously. We cannot comment on personnel matters. By day 7, that statement had changed. The department announced that Officer Trent Barclay had been placed on administrative leave pending the outcome of the investigation. By day 14, Keisha Williams' attorney, Monique Reeves, a civil rights specialist out of Los Angeles with a track record of winning settlements in excessive force cases, filed a federal lawsuit. Claims: wrongful arrest, violation of civil rights, racial profiling, deliberate indifference to constitutional rights. Defendants: Officer Trent Barclay, Sergeant Rita Alvarado, later dropped, the Riverside County Sheriff's Department, and Sunshine Academy Child Care Center. Damages sought, $4.2 million. The facility's response was faster. Sharon Kellerman issued a statement claiming that Keisha had been verbally abusive and that staff felt threatened. No mention of the bruises, no acknowledgement of the records request, no comment on why a mandated reporter was removed instead of heard. Within 3 weeks, 6 families pulled their children from Sunshine Academy. Within 5 weeks, the facility was facing its own investigation by the California Department of Social Services. Within 7 weeks, the staff member identified as Miss Jessica Moreno, 26, no formal child care training, hired through a temp agency, had resigned and left the state. 8 weeks after the arrest, Riverside County settled. $875,000. No admission of wrongdoing. Settlements never include that language, but a commitment to additional training and policy review. The settlement included a clause requiring the department to implement new protocols for responding to calls involving mandated reporters. The same day the settlement was announced, Officer Trent Barclay received his termination letter. The department released a single-line statement. Officer Barclay's employment with the Riverside County Sheriff's Department has been terminated effective immediately following the conclusion of an internal investigation. No pension, no recommendation, no quiet transfer to another jurisdiction. Done. The termination letter, portions of which were leaked to media, included language that should haunt every law enforcement agency in the country. Officer Barclay's actions on September 12, 2023, demonstrated a pattern of discriminatory conduct, failure to assess situations prior to escalation, and disregard for the professional credentials and legal rights of a civilian engaged in lawful activity. This incident, combined with prior complaints documented in his personnel file, represents a violation of department policy, public trust, and the constitutional rights of the individual involved. 16 years of ignored red flags, 5 complaints, dozens of warning signs, and finally, consequence. Keisha Williams' career didn't end, but it changed. She took a leave of absence from Riverside County, spoke at 3 state legislative hearings about mandated reporter protections, consulted on a bill, currently in committee, that would make it a misdemeanor to interfere with a mandated reporter's legal duties, appeared on 2 podcasts and a panel at a social work conference where she said the thing everyone needed to hear. I did everything right. I followed every protocol. I used every credential, and I still ended up in handcuffs. So the question isn't what I should have done differently. The question is, what should the system do differently so the next mother doesn't have to be me? Do you think officers should lose their pension when terminated for civil rights violations? Drop your answer below. Keisha Williams testified before the Riverside County Board of Supervisors on October 24, 2023. Her statement was entered into public record. This is the section that made national news. I didn't go to that daycare looking for a fight. I went looking for answers. My daughter came home with bruises, not a scrape, not a fall. Bruises shaped like fingers. And when I asked her what happened, she told me someone hurt her. So I did what I've done for 12 years in my job. I documented, I photographed, I reported, I followed the law. And then I went to the place where it happened and asked for records. That's not aggression, that's accountability. That's not trespassing, that's parenting. But the moment I walked into that building and started asking questions, I wasn't a social worker anymore. I wasn't a professional. I wasn't a mother protecting her child. I was just another black woman being too loud in a space where compliance was expected. Officer Barclay didn't ask what I wanted. He didn't ask to see my credentials. He didn't ask why I was there. He saw a black woman who wasn't leaving when told, and that was enough. I could have had a law degree. I could have been a doctor. I could have been a judge. It wouldn't have mattered. Because in that moment, my credentials disappeared. My rights disappeared. My daughter's injuries disappeared. And that's the part that keeps me up at night. Not the handcuffs. Not the arrest. Not even the humiliation of being walked out of that building in front of other parents. It's that no one, not one person in that facility, not the director, not the officer, stopped and asked about my daughter. She had bruises. I had photos. I had a case number from a filed report. And none of it mattered because the system decided I was the problem. So here's what I want you to understand. This wasn't one bad officer. This was a system that gave that officer 16 years to build a pattern of complaints and never stopped him. This was a facility that prioritized reputation over accountability. This was a moment where every institutional failure converged on one black mother asking one simple question. Who hurt my child? I got my settlement. Officer Barclay lost his job, but my daughter still has scars on her arm, and I still have the memory of being treated like a criminal for trying to protect her. So the money doesn't fix it. The apology doesn't erase it. What fixes it is changing the system so the next mother doesn't have to choose between her child's safety and her own freedom." The room was silent when she finished. 3 supervisors looked at the table. 1 wiped her eyes. The 5th, a man who'd been a vocal critic of police reform, leaned into his microphone and said something no one expected. "Ms. Williams, you're right, and I'm sorry. Do you think facilities should face criminal charges when they interfere with mandated abuse reports? Drop your answer below." Here's what the Keisha Williams case exposed. Officer Trent Barclay had 5 complaints in 10 years. 5 documented instances where civilians alleged discriminatory conduct, excessive force, or unprofessional behavior. 5 times when the system had an opportunity to remove someone who was a liability in a uniform. And 5 times, the system chose protection over accountability. That's not oversight. That's not due process. That's active cover-up. Because every time a department investigates itself and concludes policy was followed, it's telling future victims, your experience doesn't matter more than our reputation. Sunshine Academy Child Care Center had 2 citations in 18 months. Staff ratio violations. Incomplete background checks. Both corrected on paper. Both warning signs that supervision was inconsistent and hiring standards were loose. And when a licensed social worker arrived with evidence of harm and requested documentation, the facility's response was to call the police. That's not safety. That's liability management. Because the priority wasn't the child with bruises. The priority was the mother asking questions. This is the pattern. And it exists in every jurisdiction that treats badges as immunity and institutions as untouchable. Keisha Williams won her case because the evidence was overwhelming. The video went viral, and a supervisor with integrity intervened. But how many cases don't have video? How many parents don't have professional credentials to fall back on? How many mothers face the same choice, comply or be criminalized, and choose silence because they can't afford the fight? The real question is, what changes now? Because Officer Barclay is gone, but the system that protected him for 16 years is still operating. Sunshine Academy closed its doors in January 2024, but dozens of facilities with similar citation histories are still accepting children every morning. Keisha Williams got her settlement, but the next mandated reporter facing retaliation is navigating the same broken complaint process that failed her. So here's what accountability looks like if we're serious. 1. Mandatory public reporting of all law enforcement complaints, not just sustained violations. Citizens have a right to know if the officer responding to their call has a history of discriminatory conduct, even if internal investigations cleared him. Transparency isn't optional, it's foundational. 2. Independent oversight of childcare facilities with enforcement teeth. Licensing violations shouldn't be corrected on paper and forgotten. Patterns of citations should trigger mandatory audits, unannounced inspections, and swift closures when children are at risk. 3. Legal protections for mandated reporters that include criminal penalties for retaliation. If a facility calls law enforcement to remove a mandated reporter instead of providing requested documentation, that should be prosecutable interference with a lawful duty. 4. Requirement that all law enforcement officers receive training on mandated reporter laws, professional credentials, and de-escalation in situations involving parents advocating for children. Ignorance of the law isn't an excuse for civilians. It shouldn't. Full transparency about what happened, why it happened, and what's being done to prevent it from happening again. Because if we don't fix the system that allowed Officer Barclay to ignore 5 complaints, operate with impunity, and arrest a licensed professional for asking about her daughter's injuries, then we're just waiting for the next viral video. The next mother in handcuffs. The next child whose bruises get ignored because the adult asking questions was deemed too loud, too aggressive, too unwilling to comply. Keisha Williams' career isn't over, but it's forever marked by 8 minutes in a daycare parking lot where every credential she earned, every case she closed, every child she protected, disappeared behind the assumption that a black woman raising her voice was a threat. That's not justice. That's the opposite of justice. And if this story makes you angry, good. It should. Now do something with that anger. Comment below. What policy change would have prevented this? If you're watching from a state with upcoming elections, find out where your local representatives stand on mandated reporter protections and police accountability. If you work in childcare, education, or social services, share this with your colleagues and start the conversation about what happens when institutions prioritize reputation over children. Because Keisha Williams fought for her daughter and paid the price. The least we can do is fight to make sure the next mother doesn't have to. If you made it this far, you care about justice. So subscribe. We're covering stories like this every week, the cases that expose system failures, the moments that demand accountability, and the people who refuse to stay silent. 1.3 million subscribers didn't get here by accident. They got here because they're done watching injustice go viral without consequence. Be part of that. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications, and drop your answer to the question we started with. Where are you watching from, and what needs to change in your community? Because this story isn't over, it's just beginning.